The air inside St. Alora Medical Center tasted faintly of antiseptic and sleeplessness. The kind of cold, filtered quiet that usually signaled something terrible was about to happen. Lana Cross stepped into the trauma unit just past midnight. Her coat slung over one arm, her coffee untouched in the other. The overhead fluorescence buzzed like static nerves. And for a winter night in Houston, it was unusually still. She didn't like it. That kind of calm never lasted. At just 22. Lana was young for the trauma floor, but her eyes held the gravity of someone twice her age. She moved through the A like someone dancing to a rhythm, only she could hear fluid, quick, focused. She nodded to the night clerk, scanned the patient board, and tied her hair back in a loose bun. The tension she lived with never quite left her. It hung around her neck like a stethoscope, always present, always ready. Outside, wind whispered against the glass as rain began to tap in soft warning. The monitors beeped in steady rhythm. She checked in with 2 patients, adjusted meds, signed off charts. Everything was too smooth, too clean. And nurses, real nurses, knew better than to trust silence. Then it came. The intercom crackled like a dry throat. Code red. Unidentified male. Multiple GSWs. ETA 4 minutes. The moment gripped her spine like a hand made of ice. She straightened, heart thudding once, twice. Gunshot wounds. Unidentified. 4 minutes. Her feet were already moving before the words had finished echoing. Trauma bay. Prep room. Gloves, tools, tables. Voices rose in overlapping commands. Vitals cart here, get the defib ready, suction prepped. Someone dropped a clamp. Another nurse scrambled to sterilize the surgical tray. Where's doctor? Come here? Lana asked. Stuck on I-45. Pile up. At least 20 minutes out, the charge nurse said breathlessly. Lana's stomach dropped. She looked around. No attending, no backup. Just wide eyes and held breaths. The trauma bay lit up like a battlefield. 2 black SUVs skidded into the ambulance zone. Not aim miss. Not standard. Military. Doors flung open, and 2 men in full tactical gear carried a limp. Figure between them, no stretcher, no protocol. Just blood. So much blood. It ran down the man's chest like a broken river. His uniform was shredded. Kevlar soaked through. We need a surgeon. One of the soldiers barked. There is none. The charge nurse answered. Lana's breath hitched as they placed the man on the table. His pulse fluttered under her glove, weak, chaotic. His body was riddled in wounds. Not scrapes. Not grazes. Ripped, torn, shot to hell. How many? She whispered. 40, the soldier said. He's our asset. He dies, you answer to Washington. The room froze. Lana's fingers hovered inches above the first wound. She could hear the echo of her training screaming rules into her brainwave. For clearance, don't touch without consent, liability, policy, protocol. But her heart? Her heart roared something else. If we wait, he dies. Prep for field surgery, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the stillness like a scalpel. Get me clamps, suction, irrigation. I'm going in. The charge nurse's eyes went wide. Lana, you're not cleared. I don't care. No one else moved. So she did. Her hands slipped into sterile gloves. Her breath slowed. The room bent around her like a tunnel. She cut away the man's gear, revealing shredded muscle, open wounds. 40 bullets. Her training had taught her to wait, but her purpose, her oath was to save lives. So she made the first incision, and everything changed. Asterisk. The first incision tore more than flesh. It shattered the boundaries between protocol and purpose. Blood surged beneath Lana's gloved hands, dark and thick, oozing from shredded veins and broken muscle. The man on the table wasn't just a patient. He was a battlefield. And she was the only one brave or foolish enough to cross it. Clamp. Now, she barked, and someone handed her the tool with trembling fingers. The charge nurse hovered at her side, pale as the walls. All around them, chaos trembled behind a fragile curtain of control. The surgical lights bore down like interrogation. Lamps unflinching and merciless. One bullet, buried in the deltoid. She fished for it with steel and instinct, hands steady despite the rising tide of adrenaline crashing through her. Suction, irrigation, extraction. Clamp. Her gloves turned crimson. Her arms burned. Still she moved. Another bullet. Then another. BP. Dropping. A nurse called out. Hit him with epinephrine now. Lana snapped, her voice sharper than glass. A monitor flatlined. The room went still. Clear. The defibrillator paddles slammed down. His body jerked. Once. Twice. A beat. Then fluttering. Beep. 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 He was still with her. Stay with. She whispered under her breath, as if willing his soul to cling harder. She didn't know his name, didn't know his rank, didn't know why men in black SUVs had delivered him like a secret the world didn't want to keep. But she knew. One thing, he wasn't allowed to die. Not here. Not now. 5 bullets out. 12.17. Vitals are stabilizing. Someone whispered, reverent like it was a miracle happening before their eyes. A miracle? No. It was blood. Will, precision. Grit. 20-6 bullets sat in the tray beside her now, gleaming under fluorescent light like tiny executioners. She had disarmed one by one. In the corner of the trauma bay. The commanding officer stood stone still, watching, not interfering. But his eyes, those cold military eyes, betrayed something Lana didn't expect. Desperation. He had brought this soldier here not because she was qualified, but because she was the last option. 30-1. Gash near the abdomen burst open as she worked. Blood flooded the tray. Time stretched thin, breaking into pieces around her ears. She wasn't sure how long they'd been operating. 10 minutes? 20? Her hands shook now, not from fear, but from fatigue. The last 5 bullets were the worst, buried deep in the gut, near organs, near arteries. Every movement was a gamble. A slip could rupture everything. The soldier flatlined again. No, Lana hissed through her teeth. You are not dying on me now. She shocked him. Once. Twice. No response. A third time. The heart monitor blipped. Then again. Then steadied. She exhaled through clenched teeth, her chest heaving, and then the last bullet. It sat so deep behind the liver, she had to reroute everything just to see it. Her vision blurred. Her fingers slipped, but she steadied. Herself, a nurse dabbed her brow. Another whispered something like a prayer. She pulled the final slug out and dropped it into the tray with a metallic clink. 40 bullets. 40 miracles. The soldier's chest rose and fell now, labored. But alive. The tray beside her looked like a graveyard of death narrowly escaped. Lana backed away, her body trembling, soaked in sweat and blood. She peeled off her gloves, one finger at a time. The world returned in sound monitors, beeping, voices breaking. The spell. The commander stepped forward, his voice low. You saved him. Lana looked at the man on the table. Alive. Broken. But alive. I just did what had to be done, she murmured. But even she knew it wasn't that simple. Asterisk, she had crossed a line tonight. A line drawn in policy and legal bindings and fear. A line nurses weren't supposed to touch. And though no sirens wailed and no reprimands came yet, Lana could feel it. The storm wasn't over. It had just begun. The sun had barely cracked the horizon when Lana Cross returned to the hospital that had, until last night, been her entire world. The cold morning air clung to her scrubs, now stiff with dried blood. The soldiers, some of it hers. The fabric stuck to her like guilt, or maybe pride. She couldn't tell the difference anymore. The E-doors slid open with their usual whoosh, but the air inside felt different, heavy, denser, as if the building itself knew what she had done. Lana stepped inside, expecting something, anything. A nod, a whisper, a simple, human acknowledgement that she had fought a war in that trauma bay and won. Instead, silence. Her shoes echoed down the hallway like gunshots in a cathedral. Nurses who once shared coffee and laughter now turned their eyes away. One tech quickly pretended to check a supply cart. Another ducked into a patient room without even glancing up. It wasn't shame she saw in their faces. It was fear. Not of her. Of being seen standing with her. She moved through the ward slowly, scanning faces she thought she knew, and each one told the same story. Don't get involved. She reached the break room. The lights were off. Strange. The door creaked as she pushed it open, expecting empty coffee cups and the clatter of shift change chatter. Instead, her name rang out over the hospital. Pa, Nurse Lana Cross, please report to administration. Immediately. The voice was sharp, clean, stripped of emotion. Lana froze. Her spine tingled. This wasn't how it usually sounded. Not the usual cheerful receptionist. Not the casual, "We need you for paperwork" tone. This was surgical. Prepared. She walked back. Down the corridor slower now. Each footstep landed like a question she wasn't sure how to answer. Her mouth went dry. The silence was louder than any alarm. At the end of the hall, the administration doors loomed like courtroom gates. She pushed them open. Inside, 2 uniformed security guards. A woman from HR she had met once during orientation, and Dr. Malcolm, Beckman, chief of staff, leaning against a conference table with his arms folded and his expression locked in a careful kind of neutrality. "Lana," he said, nodding. "Please, have a seat." She didn't. "What's this about?" she asked. The HR woman inhaled sharply, as if bracing to read her own eulogy. "We'll be direct. A review of last night's incident has identified multiple protocol violations." She began. "You performed unauthorized surgery. You acted without attending oversight. You assumed legal liability outside of hospital policy." Lana blinked. "You mean the night I saved a life?" Beckman stepped in now, his voice softer, almost rehearsed. "What you did was courageous, but dangerous. We're a civilian institution, Lana. We don't answer to military command. And without formal consent, any procedure of that magnitude places this hospital in legal jeopardy." "I didn't have time for paperwork," Lana snapped. "The man was dying. You weren't here. No one was. I did what I had to do. And now we have no choice," HR said, sliding an envelope across the table. "Effective immediately, your employment is terminated. 1 week severance. Please return your badge." Lana stared at the envelope like it was a bullet. 1 week's pay for saving a life. Life no one else had the courage or capability to save. "You're firing me? For being a nurse?" Her voice cracked. "For being reckless," the HR woman said. "For being a liability," Beckman added. There it was. Not a word about the man who lived. Not a whisper about the miracle. Just risk. Policy. Insurance. Fear. The guard took a step forward. That was the worst part, how choreographed it all felt. Like they had rehearsed this. Like they'd already decided the moment she made that first incision. Lana's hands trembled as she unclipped her ID badge. The same one she'd worn through countless 12-hour shifts, during codes, traumas, births and deaths. The same badge she'd earned. She placed it on the table like a funeral offering, then turned to leave. "You're a talented nurse." "Lana," Beckman said behind her, "this isn't personal." She paused. Her voice dropped to a whisper, sharp as ice. "Then why does it feel like betrayal?" No one answered. They didn't need to, because as the doors closed behind her, Lana didn't just walk out of a hospital. She was being erased from it. Erased for acting on instinct when everyone else froze. Erased for doing something no one else could. And somewhere, deep inside, the part of her that had once believed in systems, in safety nets, and hospital values fractured. They had made her a ghost. But ghosts don't stay buried forever. Asterisk. The world didn't end the way Lana expected. There were no reporters waiting outside the hospital. No outraged veterans or fellow nurses rising up in protest. Just a thick, gray sky hanging low over Houston, and a parking lot, so still it felt like a painting. She stood beside her car for nearly 5 minutes, before realizing she was still holding the severance envelope in one hand, and her hospital ID in the other, badge stripped of access, of value, of meaning. She dropped it in the passenger seat, like it burned. Inside her apartment, silence fell like a blanket soaked in cold water. She locked the door behind her, but didn't move. Just stood there, in her blood-stained scrubs, listening for something, anything that might signal this wasn't real. That someone, somewhere, had seen her, understood what she'd done. But there was nothing. Only the faint hum of the refrigerator, and the whisper of her own breath. She peeled off her shoes, then her gloves, the same ones that had gripped a man's heart and brought it back to life. The memory of his pulse under her fingertips hit her like a slap. It had been fluttering, weak, almost gone, and she had pulled it back, bullet by bullet, shock by shock. She should have felt proud. Instead, her chest was hollow. Her phone buzzed once. Hope flared. A message from a fellow nurse? Maybe someone willing to say thank you? Maybe even the soldier's family? She grabbed it. It was an automated reminder. Her CPR certification was due for renewal. The irony crushed her. She sat down at her kitchen table, hands folded tightly in her lap, and stared at her badge resting in a dish near the sink. The photograph, her smile felt like it belonged to someone else. She hadn't eaten in over a day. Her body was beginning to feel it. Tremors, nausea, the phantom ache in her back from hours of standing over an open body. But food didn't matter now. What mattered was the growing realization that no one was coming. Not the hospital, not the press, not the patient, not even the nurses who'd watched her save a man with their own eyes. And that was when the true fear set in. It wasn't just the hospital that had turned on her. It was the system. The unspoken agreement among professionals. Follow the rules, even if it kills someone. Stay quiet. Don't draw attention. Don't make waves. She had broken that pact. Now she was radioactive. Her phone stayed silent. Her inbox empty. Not even spam had the courage to reach her. The only sound came from outside, a dog barking, a garbage truck rumbling past, a child laughing down the hall. The world moved on. Oblivious to the war waging in her chest. Lana moved to the bathroom and stared into the mirror. She didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her eyes were rimmed red. Her lips were cracked. Her face blotched with fatigue and raw defiance. She reached for the faucet, turned it on, and washed her hands slowly. Blood came off in ribbons, circling the drain like evidence being erased. She dried her fingers, whispered to her reflection, "I saved him. I saved his life." The mirror didn't respond. Guilt slithered into the room, like smoke. Not for what she'd done, but for not knowing if she'd be brave enough to do it again. Would she still reach for the scalpel next time? Would she still cut into a dying man with no permission, no legal coverage, no safety net? She sat on the floor, knees to her chest, as questions began to clod her from the inside. What if the bullets had killed him anyway? What if she missed something? What if the military was already burying the story? What if he never even knew she saved him? The truth was a knife she couldn't put down. She had acted on instinct, not rules, not policy, just raw human instinct. And now she was alone. The knock came just past. Midnight. 3 slow raps on the door. She froze. Her heart slammed into her ribs. No one visited her. Not unannounced. Not ever. She crept to the door and looked through the PEEPHOLE. No one. Knock. Louder this time. Then silence. She stood there, holding her breath, until minutes passed, and the only sound was her pulse pounding in her ears. When she finally opened the door, nothing. Just a manila envelope left on the floor. No address. No return label. She picked it up with trembling hands, peeled it open. Inside, one photo. A still image from the trauma bay. Grainy, low-res, clearly taken from a security camera. It showed her standing over the seal, gloves soaked in blood, her eyes locked on his open chest. Her face was a mask of absolute focus. Taped to the back. A sticky note with 5 words. We saw what you did. No signature. No number. No explanation. Lana stared at the note as her lungs seized. Someone had been watching. But were they friend? Or something else entirely? The silence in her apartment deepened, not emptier, but heavier. Like the calm before another storm. The sky over Houston was unusually blue that morning, a cloudless stretch of fragile calm. Lana Cross sat on her apartment's front porch, wrapped in an old navy blue hoodie that didn't quite block the bite of wind. Her legs were curled beneath her, a chipped mug of stale coffee cradled between her palms, and her eyes were locked on nothing. It had been 4 days. 4 days since the hospital exiled her. 4 days since the silence began swallowing her whole. She hadn't left her apartment except to pick up groceries in the dead of night, moving like a ghost through a city that had decided she no longer mattered. Her phone still hadn't buzzed, not with apologies, not with gratitude, not with even the decency of closure. She had saved a life, and the world had gone silent. Until now. It began as a distant rumble, faint, rhythmic, almost like thunder. Lana squinted into the sky, unsure if she was imagining it. But the rumble didn't fade. It grew. Stronger. Louder. Faster. She stood slowly, setting the mug on the porch rail, heart beginning to hammer against her ribs. Then she saw them. 2 matte black helicopters crested the skyline, cutting through the air like predators. There, rotors churned the clouds above, beating the sky into submission. They weren't commercial. These were military, large, armed, and intentional, and they weren't passing through. They were descending toward her. Lana stumbled back as the wind from the rotors whipped her hair into her face. The trees bent sideways. Car alarms screamed. Neighbors ran out of their houses in bathrobes and slippers, phones already held high, recording every second. The entire block held its breath. The first chopper hovered directly above the parking lot. The second circled once, then steadied itself like a guard dog on patrol. Doors opened. 4 figures dropped down on ropes, like shadows peeled from the sky boots hitting pavement in practiced rhythm. They wore dark uniforms, vests, helmets. Unmistakably military. But it was the 5th figure, the one who descended last, that turned murmurs into silence. Tall man, broad-shouldered, silver eagles on his collar. No helmet, just authority in every step. He walked toward her without hesitation, cutting through the wind like it was nothing. The block fell completely still. Even the helicopters stopped moving. hovering like dragons in mourning. The man stopped at the base of Lana's porch steps, removed his sunglasses. His eyes were ice blue, sharp and human and impossibly steady. "Miss Cross?" he said. Lana's voice caught in her throat. Yes?" He reached into his uniform and withdrew a sealed envelope. Then, in front of her neighbors, the phones, the gasps, he took a step back and saluted. The world tilted. Lana's knees almost buckled. "You saved one of ours," he said. "And the United States Navy doesn't forget its own." She reached for the envelope with shaking fingers. Inside was thick stationery, embossed with the Navy's crest. Beneath the formal letter signed by 2 admirals and a general was a check, $100,000. She blinked in disbelief. I don't understand," she whispered. The commander's expression softened. "You performed an unauthorized emergency surgery on a Tier 1 special operator. 40 bullets, no surgeon, no time. We debriefed him yesterday. He remembered everything." Lana's breath left her. "He told us he felt himself dying, until your hands reached in and pulled him back." The commander stepped aside as another officer approached with a velvet-lined case. He opened it. Inside sat a metal shining silver, shaped like an eagle wrapped around a cross. Etched beneath it, "For civilian valor, only 47 had ever been awarded. Until now." "He said one more thing," the commander added. "He said he didn't know your name, but he knew what it felt like to matter to someone who had nothing to gain and everything to lose." Lana's hands trembled as she lifted the metal from the box. It was heavier than it looked. Not just in weight, in meaning. The commander leaned in. "We don't salute civilians often," he said. "But today, Miss Cross, you're not just a civilian. You're the reason one of our finest is still breathing." Applause erupted from across the street, first hesitant, then thunderous. A child waved from a porch. A man clapped with tears in his eyes. The neighbors who had turned away days ago now leaned forward, phones forgotten, all on their faces. Lana blinked through a sudden blur of tears. She hadn't been arrested. She hadn't been shamed. She had been seen. Acknowledged. Respected. She stepped forward and offered her hand to the commander. He shook it firmly. "Thank you," she said, voice raw with emotion. He nodded once. "No," he replied. "Thank you." Then, with the precision of a war machine, the team turned, boarded the helicopters, and disappeared into the sky. The applause lingered even after they were gone, and Lana stood on her porch with a medal in one hand, a check in the other, and a truth in her heart that no system could ever erase. She had done the right thing, and for the first time in days, the silence was gone, replaced by something louder. Justice. By dawn the next morning, Lana Cross was no longer just a nurse. She was a name trending across every major news network in the country. It started with a single 14-second clip posted by a neighbor, the shaky, wind-blown footage of a Navy commander saluting a young woman on a front porch as helicopters thundered overhead. No caption, no explanation, just raw footage and 5 haunting words spoken by someone off camera. "She's the one who saved him." The video hit TikTok like a lightning strike. 2 million views by noon, 10 million by evening. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag nurse hero number 40 bullets. Hashtag Lana Cross. Hashtag she didn't wait. By the time Lana had finished her second cup of coffee that morning, news vans had begun lining the street. Anchors tripped over each other trying to explain what had happened, piecing together fragments of the story, like archaeologists uncovering truth from ash. Fired for saving a life, punished for defying protocol, honored by the U.S. Navy, and silenced by her own hospital. She had become the embodiment of a question America couldn't stop asking. When did saving a life become a fireable offense? Lana stayed inside. She didn't open her curtains. Didn't answer the phone. Not even when Anderson Cooper's team left a voicemail asking for an interview. She wasn't ready for this. Her body was still sore from that night. Her mind frayed at the edges. But the world didn't care. The world was hungry. And this time, it wasn't to bury her, but to crown her god at first. It felt like vindication. Nurses from across the country posted videos saying her name. Veterans weighed in, calling her the kind of courage they remembered from combat zones. A former Navy medic tweeted, "She did what we trained for. She didn't freeze. She didn't flinch. She acted." That's what heroes do. A U.S. senator quoted her story on the Senate floor. Podcasts debated ethics. Morning shows dissected hospital. Liability policies. Then came the fallout. A leaked internal memo from St. Alora Medical Center surfaced online. It detailed her firing in cold, clinical language, unauthorized field surgery, legal liability, public relations risk. Public relations risk. The internet responded with fury. Protesters showed up outside the hospital holding signs. Lana saved a hero, now we save her. And protocols don't breathe. People do. Hospital officials released a statement the next day. It was meant to sound firm, professional. Instead, it sounded like an apology duct-taped to a lawsuit. Lana stood in her kitchen, arms folded, staring at the television as a local news anchor read from a teleprompter. ... And while the hospital maintains its position, sources confirm that multiple board members have resigned, and a full review of emergency protocols is now underway. Then came a knock at her door, not harsh like the security guards, not soft like a friend. This was deliberate, measured. She opened it to find a woman in a sleek navy suit holding a slim leather portfolio. "I'm Jenna Lowell," she said, offering a business card. "Director of Public Affairs for Ridge Haven. Medical." Lana blinked. "I don't know what that is." "You will." Jenna stepped inside and laid the portfolio on the table. "We've been following your story. So have our board members. So have about 30 million Americans. And we're not here to punish you for your courage." Lana tilted her head. "Then what do you want?" "We want to offer you a position. Not as a nurse." Her heart sank. "Wait," Jenna smiled. "Not just as a nurse. We're offering you the role of Chief of Emergency Ethics and Response. A new position, built around you, your judgment, your instinct, your story. We want you to lead a national program to teach nurses what you already know, how to act when policy fails and lives hang in the balance." Lana stared at her, stunned. She wasn't being asked to apply. She was being invited to lead. "We're offering full relocation, housing, a full team under your guidance," Jenna continued. "You'd be rewriting the rules so no nurse ever has to choose between doing the right thing and keeping her job." Lana didn't speak. She didn't cry. She simply nodded, lips pressed tightly together as if to keep the emotion from pouring out. But Jenna noticed the slight tremble in her hands. "You don't have to decide now," she said gently. "But just know you're no longer alone." When the door closed behind her, Lana collapsed into the nearest chair. Her phone vibrated again. Messages from people she'd never met. "You saved a life and gave us all permission to speak up. Because of you, I filed a report against the doctor who ignored my son's signs. I'm in nursing school because of you. Thank you for showing me what bravery looks like." And then, one message that hit harder than all the rest. Unknown. Number. One sentence. "You don't know me, but I'm the one you saved." Lana's hands flew to her mouth. The seal. He was alive. He remembered. She whispered into the stillness, as if he could hear it through time, through wires, through everything. "I remember you too." And in that moment, surrounded by ringing phones, flashing headlines, and the roar of a world finally catching up to her truth, Lana Cross, once discarded and disavowed, finally felt what it meant to be heard. And she hadn't even begun to speak. Asterisk, asterisk. The plane landed in Denver, under a sky so crisp it looked painted. Snow clung to the edges of the runway, untouched and silent. Lana Cross stepped down the stairwell with a duffel in one hand, a single suitcase in the other, and a folder tucked inside her coat. Inside that folder was the official offer from Ridge Haven Medical, her new home, her new title, her new beginning. She still hadn't fully accepted it, not out loud, not in her heart. Part of her kept expecting the world to rip it away again. The ride from the airport to Ridge Haven was quiet. The driver, a hospital liaison named Marcus, chatted politely, but Lana didn't hear most of what he said. Her mind drifted to the trauma bay, to the first incision, to the man on the table with 40 bullets in him, to the moment the world had looked away and then looked back. All at once, she was no longer just a nurse. She was a name, a symbol, a spark, and she wasn't sure if that scared her more than it thrilled her. Ridge Haven came into view around the bend, a sleek, modern facility built near the base of the Rocky Mountains. No looming towers, no ego in the architecture, just clean lines, sunlight pouring through glass, and warmth radiating from its entrance. A banner stretched above the main doorway, fluttering in the cold wind. Welcome, Lana Cross. Where purpose leads, we follow. Her throat tightened. She hadn't expected that dot inside. The lobby was alive with soft movement. Families, nurses, staff in cobalt blue scrubs. The front desk receptionist, barely older than Lana had been when she first started, stood up the moment she walked in. You must be Miss Cross, she said, smiling nervously. They're waiting for you upstairs. I mean, the whole wing is. Lana nodded, unsure what to say. Words felt too small dot as she walked the halls, heads turned but not in shame or silence like before. Here, people nodded, smiled, even clapped quietly. Someone whispered her name like it was a legend. She passed a nurse, who stopped and pressed a hand to her chest as if to say thank you without making a sound. When she reached her office, Lana paused. Her name was etched on the glass in soft silver. Font, Lana Cross, RN Chief of Emergency Ethics, and response not printed on a sticker. Not temporary. Etched. She opened the door. Inside, a clean desk, a freshly starched coat hung by the window, and a leather-bound notebook waiting for her first words. A welcome letter sat in the center of the table. We're proud to work with you. This place is better because you said yes. She sat slowly, hands on the desk, and let the moment sink in. This wasn't just a title. It was permission to lead, to teach, to protect others from what she had endured. That afternoon, she didn't stay behind the desk. She walked the floor through trauma, pediatrics, even the break room. She met with every nurse on shift, listened to every story, asked questions no one else had ever bothered to ask. When she entered Trauma 3, a child was crying. She knelt beside the bed and offered her hand, voice calm and steady. I'm here. Now? She whispered. Just like that night. Just like always. Outside the window, the sun dipped low behind the mountains, casting golden fire across the snow. The world looked brand new. And yet, there were shadows. After her rounds, Lana returned to her office to find an envelope on her desk, no return address. Just her name scrawled in precise handwriting. She opened it. Inside, a single sheet of paper, printed in bold. He wasn't supposed to live. No signature. No explanation. Just those 5 words. Her heart hammered in her chest. Someone didn't want the soldier to survive. Someone had expected and maybe needed him to die that night. And now, she had disrupted more than a life. She had disrupted a plan. Suddenly, the praise, the cameras, the job, it all felt like a spotlight, one she hadn't asked for, one that made her easier to see and easier to target. But then she looked back at the silver letters on the glass, Chief of Emergency Ethics and Response, and she straightened her spine, because if someone out there was afraid of what she represented, it meant she was doing something right. They had tried to bury her now. She had roots, and they had no idea how deep they went. Asterisk, asterisk. The road leading to the secure naval medical base was flanked by snow-covered pines, their branches swaying in the cold wind like silent sentinels. Lana Cross sat in the back of a black SUV, her fingers clenched around the folded letter in her coat pocket, the one that had summoned her here with just 4 words. He asked for you. They didn't need to say who. She already knew. The guards at the base gate didn't ask for ID. They just nodded. One saluted. The driver said nothing as they passed through checkpoint after checkpoint. Lana barely breathed. She had no idea what she was walking into, only that she had to. The recovery center was quiet, tucked away from the larger facilities. No name on the front, just reinforced walls and frosted windows. A military nurse met her at the door and led her through a series of sterile corridors until they reached a simple room with a single hospital bed. Take your time, the nurse said softly, then stepped away, leaving Lana alone in the silence. She stood in the doorway for a moment, barely able to move. He was sitting up in bed, facing the window, the light catching the edges of the long scar that ran from his shoulder to his ribs. His hair was cropped short, his back straight, but even from here, she could see the stiffness in his movement, scar tissue still healing, nerves still reawakening. Beside the bed, a monitor beeped steadily. Not urgent. Just alive. That sound alone made Lana's throat tighten. I heard footsteps, he said without turning. Knew it had to be you. She blinked, startled. His voice was low, rough, but steady. How? She asked, stepping closer. I don't remember everything, he said, still looking out the window. But I remember the sound of your breath. You held it whenever you reached for something delicate. You weren't supposed to be there, but you stayed. He finally turned, and their eyes met for the first time. Blue, piercing, haunted. I owe you more than I can ever repay, he said. Lana shook her head. You don't owe me anything. I disagree, he said, and motioned to the chair beside his bed. Please. She sat down slowly. Her hands trembled slightly, but not from fear, from gravity. I don't even know your name, she whispered. He hesitated, then gave a small, guarded smile. Call me Ash. That's enough for now. Okay? Ash. For a few moments, silence filled the room like steam. Not heavy, not awkward, just thick with the things neither of them knew how to say. I thought you died, she said softly. Twice, maybe 3 times. I almost lost you. You didn't? He replied. And you were alone. She nodded. You didn't wait for permission, he continued. That's rare, especially in systems built to punish instinct. That instinct almost cost me everything, Lana said. Did it? He asked. She didn't respond. Then he leaned forward slightly, wincing as his ribs shifted. There's something you should know. Something I couldn't tell anyone until now. Lana's breath caught. A week before the ambush, he said, voice lowering, we intercepted a transmission during an op. It was encrypted high level. Not from a foreign enemy, from someone inside. Her stomach turned. They called for an asset extraction to be neutralized. That was me. The intel I was carrying? It wasn't supposed to leave the desert. Someone wanted me erased. Lana sat back, her blood running cold. "They didn't expect me to survive the hit," Ash said. "Let alone be brought into a civilian hospital. Let alone for you to keep me alive long enough to talk." "And now?" Lana asked, her voice barely audible. "I'm being moved under deep cover within the week. New name, new location. But before I disappear, I needed to thank the one person who didn't hesitate." He looked at her, really looked at her, and his voice broke, just slightly. "You brought me back." Lana nodded, tears stinging at the edges of her eyes. "You brought me back too. I just didn't know it until now." They sat in silence. Again, this time not as strangers, but as survivors of the same impossible night. As she stood to leave, Ash said one final thing. "There's a file. One only you should see. I had it delivered anonymously. Read it, and when you do watch your back, you saved me, Lana. But someone out there didn't want me to be saved. And they know your name now." Lana froze. He didn't elaborate. He didn't have to. Outside, the sky was darkening. The wind picked up again. And as she left the base, heart pounding, a black sedan she didn't recognize pulled into traffic behind her SUV. No tags. No driver in uniform. Just headlights that didn't blink. She checked her rearview mirror, every nerve on edge, because now she knew the truth. The night she saved a Navy SEAL wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning of something much, much deeper. And someone wasn't done watching her. Asterisk. The file arrived 3 days later. It was left at the front desk of Ridge Haven Medical, slipped into an envelope with no name, no return address. Just a single word typed across the front. Cross. The receptionist handed it to Lana nervously, as if it might explode. She didn't open it in the hospital. She waited until nightfall, alone in her apartment, the lights off, blinds drawn. She used scissors to slit the envelope open. Her breath shallow. Inside were 6 pages. Black dash and dash white. Stamped, confidential redacted. Most of the names were blacked out. But the dates, locations, and directives were intact. One paragraph stood out. Asset Bravo 7 deemed high risk due to intel breach involving internal operatives. Extraction ordered. Contingency. Terminate with plausible denial. Civilian intervention not accounted for. Event compromise. High probability if contact survives. Lana stared at the line. Civilian intervention not accounted for. That meant her. They had planned for everything except her hands, her instinct, her refusal to wait. And now someone out there knew she had disrupted the plan. Knew she had saved the wrong man. For a long moment, she sat in the dark, the papers trembling in her hands. Then came the knock. It was soft, delicate, too delicate. She rose slowly, heart slamming in her chest, and peered through the PEEPHOLE. Just a girl, barely 20, clean white nursing scrubs. A hospital badge that still gleamed with fresh lamination. She clutched a notepad to her chest, like armor. Lana opened the door cautiously. "I'm sorry," the girl said quickly, voice cracking. "I shouldn't bother you, but I had to. I had to." Lana furrowed her brow. "You're?" "My name's Elise. I'm a nursing student. 2nd year. You probably don't know me, but..." She paused, tears welling in her eyes. "You're the reason I didn't quit." Lana blinked. "What do you mean?" "I saw the video. The helicopters, the metal, but more than that. I saw someone who didn't wait, who acted when it mattered. I was on the edge, between quitting school and staying. I'd seen too much already. Doctors ignoring signs, nurses bullied into silence, patients dying because of red tape. I thought, maybe this isn't for me." Elise looked at Lana with a kind of reverence that felt heavier than any metal. "But then I saw you, and I realized It's not the system that defines a nurse. It's what she does when no one else will. Lana stepped aside without speaking and motioned for Elise to come in. They sat at the small kitchen table, two women divided by experience, but connected by purpose. "I just wanted to thank you," Elise whispered, "and to ask, how do you know when to act?" Lana looked down at her hands, scarred, steady. She thought of Ash, of the silence that followed, of the file in the envelope, of the black sedan she saw tailing her again just yesterday. Always far enough to be innocent, always close enough to remind her it wasn't. "You don't," she said softly. "You just feel it, like a second heartbeat. And when that moment comes, you move, even if no one follows." Elise nodded, tears now rolling freely. "Promise me something," Lana said, her voice a little stronger now. Elise straightened. "Anything. When that moment comes for you, don't wait for permission. You'll be scared. You'll think you're alone. But you won't be. I'll be there, even if you never see me again. Because you're not just following in my footsteps." She reached over and tapped Elise's chest, just above the badge. "You're carrying the reason I did it." They stood and embraced. No camera, no crowd. Just a silent passing of a torch from one soul to another. Later that night, long after Elise had gone, Lana stood by her window and looked down into the street. The black sedan was there again, parked. Engine running, watching. She didn't flinch this time. She stepped out onto her balcony and stared directly at it. Then slowly, deliberately, she raised her hand, not in fear, but in defiance, and waved. Not a friendly wave, a challenge. Inside her, something shifted. The helplessness was gone. Whoever was watching had made a mistake. They'd left her alive. And Lana Cross didn't just survive anymore. She led. The snow had melted in Denver, but the air still bit sharp with the edge of winter as Lana Cross stood backstage at the National Summit for Medical Ethics and Emergency Response. 100 feet beyond the curtain, the auditorium was packed wall to wall. Military officers, surgeons, hospital CEOs, nursing unions, press outlets, and students in white coats holding notepads like lifelines. And they were all waiting for her. Her heart should have been racing, but it wasn't. Not now. Not after everything. The death threats, the black sedan. The file that confirmed she had disrupted a quiet execution with her bare hands. The man she had saved was gone now, relocated, repurposed, reassigned. Tier 1 operators don't retire. They vanish, but not before leaving her a final message encrypted in the file metadata. "Your instinct saved me. Don't let them turn it off." She hadn't. She wouldn't. A voice echoed from beyond the curtain. "Please welcome Chief Lana Cross." Applause surged like a wave crashing against the stage. She stepped into the light, not in scrubs, not in blood-stained boots, but in a navy suit with a silver pin over her heart, the same medal awarded by the U.S. Navy, polished to a mirror shine. Her name was etched into the screen behind her in bold capital letters. Beneath it, the nurse who refused to wait. She approached the podium. Flashes went off. Reporters held pens mid-air. Even the surgeons sat forward in their seats. But when she spoke, her voice was quiet, intimate, like she was still in the trauma. Bay, speaking only to the dying man on the table. "I was told once," she began, "that what I did was reckless." She paused. But what they didn't understand is that silence is reckless. Hesitation is reckless. Following orders while someone bleeds out in front of you, that's not medicine. That's fear. The room was dead still. I was a 22-year-old nurse when they brought in a man torn apart by 40 bullets. The surgeon was gone. The attending staff froze. There was no time for clearance, no time for comfort, just a dying man and my hands. She looked around the room, saw the faces of skeptics and believers alike. I didn't save him because I was fearless. I saved him because I couldn't not act. She stepped away from the podium, letting her words settle. I was fired for it. Gasps. I was erased from my hospital, escorted out like a criminal, and blacklisted across the system I trained my whole life to serve. She scanned the audience, saw Elise in the third row, her eyes full of fire. But you know what happened. After that, the truth got louder than the system. Applause rippled through the room, because courage doesn't ask for permission. Now the claps turned to cheers. Someone stood, then another. Dozens. The room rose like a wave, and still Lana wasn't done. She raised one hand, quieting them. There's something else you need to know, she said. Something deeper than headlines and medals. Her voice dropped. They didn't just want that soldier dead. They wanted him silenced. And when I saved him, I became a problem. Whispers. And I've been watched, stalked, threatened. Not because I lied, but because I didn't. Now the room was a storm. Journalists typed furiously. Officers looked at each other. A security team moved to the side of the stage. Lana didn't flinch. I'm saying this now, in public, in front of you all, because this isn't just about me anymore. Every nurse, every EMT, every trainee in this room might one day be standing where I stood. And when that moment comes, when instinct screams louder than protocol, don't you dare look away. She pointed to the crowd now, her voice aflame. Do what's right. You save them. You choose life over rules. And if they come for you, I will stand with you. The audience erupted, standing ovation, roaring. The thunder of feet and applause filled the chamber, bouncing off the walls like cannon fire. And in that moment, Lana wasn't just a nurse, or a name, or a headline. She was a movement. Later that night, she stood alone on the rooftop of Ridge Haven Medical, the city glowing quietly beneath her. The speech was already being replayed on every major network. The hashtags had exploded again. The hospital had received over 12,000 emails in the last hour, most of them from young nurses, saying the same thing. I won't wait anymore. She smiled faintly, closing her eyes. Behind her, someone stepped onto the roof. Boots got her hand, went instinctively to her phone. Then she heard the voice. I told you, Ash said quietly. They'd never see it coming. She turned. There he was, civilian clothes, eyes just as sharp. I thought you were gone. I was, he said. But someone's trying to rewrite the rules. Thought I'd stop by and see how that's going. She stepped forward. You're risking everything being here. So did you? They didn't hug. Didn't need to. He handed her something. Sealed envelope. What is this? Insurance, he said. Names, coordinates, fail-safes. If anything happens to you, send it to the press. She hesitated. You sure? Lana, he said, you didn't just save me. You changed the war. Then he turned and vanished into the night. She stood alone again, but didn't feel alone. Below, the hospital bustled. Inside, nurses moved. Like clockwork, like fire. Above, the stars blinked softly, witnesses to something bigger than justice. Legacy. Lana Cross looked out over the city, over the skyline, over the system she had once served, and now led. And in the quiet, she whispered, into the wind, this is just the beginning. And the world finally listened.